So let's talk about the insectoids. First of all, you talked about your guy at Bella last time, right?
Yeah.
Can you expand on her?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good topic. It's a fun topic to start with, Alex. So just for anybody who's like didn't see the last segment, which is where I think we talked about her first, the ant beings, the ant people featured in some of my childhood abductions. And I was always kind of scared of them. And then about 4 years, I don't know, 2018, I had an ant being come to me in very luminous form, kind of making amends and explaining the situation. And I would count her as a good friend and guide now, as we made a relationship over tentatively and carefully over time. And I call her Bella. She's actually of a much larger collective of ant beings, and they exist at a much higher frequency and higher dimension. So I would say that they're beings of light. We might see them as ants in this dimension in the third density, bipedal, so they're standing up ants on two legs. We're very tall.
With wings also?
Yeah, sometimes they have wings. Yeah, it's
Okay.
like little, yeah. But they say they can't work with humans like this because of their appearance. They just look, it's a huge insect. I mean, it
Right.
can be disorienting for a human person. And they're famous for, the ant people are famous for, in the Hopi cosmology, for in their historical reference, they say that the ant people saved them from starvation a long time ago, before the beginning of time. And but to hear Bella speak this, and by the way, Bella is she actually has a numerical value as her name. It's a long series of like digits that relate to creation codes. And I sense the larger group around her when she's communicating with me, but I just use that as shorthand to more make it intelligible in human terms, to have her give her a name, right?
Okay.
And she has said, we come to Earth millions of years ago, stayed and helped, came back and forth over further and future millennia. We are buried in the story of your Egypt, but we always return to the stars. So it's interesting, they trace their heritage to the stars, although we reference them a lot with Earth. We think they live here on Earth, in a way that's true, but ultimately they're galactic. At least that's my impression and my understanding, having related with her for a while. Extremely galactic. And their energy, I find her very elegant. I mean, her energy, when I read it in its pure form, comes to me in a pink and green luminosity. And it's very much connected to the heart chakra, because it's that unconditional upper dimensional kind of love that a lot of times we don't have a frame of reference for here. But she's always, the ant people have been very, very careful about asking permission to intervene. They say, what is she said, we never interfere with help or love unless we have permission. They're very much into free will for humans, and not intervening in that. And so again, I would say they ended up co-opted by the Orion group, much as I was co-opted by the Orion group. And I think it's some kind of cosmic justice or karmic resolution, if you like, that we ended up becoming friends and allies after this time of being both used in the programs in different ways. I don't know if that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me.
So they were co-opted like way back in the past, you're saying?
By the program, no, more in more recent time.
Oh, in
Yeah.
more
And I
recent
think,
time.
yeah. So, I was abducted back, we're going back in time to the 70s, then.
Okay,
And I
so
think,
just hold on. So we have to
mhm,
kind of specify, because you're
mhm.
saying that they're like working with light and stuff, but they are actually susceptible to deception also? Like they were
They could be not
deceived?
deception, but I think that here's what I really think about this. If you take one of those beings and dial it down to 3D, you can use it. You can use its light. And I also feel that because they are so living in a realm of non-polarity, it's way into the unified field of consciousness. There is no duality there. There is no polarized perspective. They may have very well volunteered for the job to
Oh,
experience what it would be like to be enslaved in this way.
okay.
That won't make sense to a 3D perspective here
Yep.
in linear human terms. But remember, from a higher perspective, from their consciousness field, this might be an interesting experience.
So she knew it, or they knew it going in, you mean?
This is my impression intuitively, that if
Okay.
we look at it from a like a soul's perspective or the higher perspective of the why, um, yeah, it feels to have something to do with that kind of exploration of experience. Yeah,
Okay.
much in
So
it, we could say in the same way that I was in a way volunteered to experience what I experienced. Again, that's not from a 3D perspective. It's from the perspective of a higher awareness in the
okay.
soul's journey and what we're learning.
So do you think it was a dialing down of frequency to actually have a physical body, or do they have like avatars here in 3D?
I think
Or
it's a dialing down of frequency. That I think that would be an adequate way to describe it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there are two. I can clarify too that I would say there could be other groups that are, yeah, lower vibrational groups that were easily more co-opted. You know, if we talk about beings on a spectrum through different frequency bandwidths with of like 3D, 4D, 5D, and so on. You know, you're going to get a different.
Okay,
It's a different consciousness field. It's a different intention with those groups. So there could be a darker group.
sure,
I don't know.
sure. Do you know if she's working with a bigger group that is part of like a federation or a council that is working with the Earth like collectively now, or are they all only working personally with people?
Their group, I've not got that impression. It could be. She's never spoken to me in that way about working with a wider, federation, but it could be they want to help. Above all, they are selfless and they're lovers. I mean, their heart frequency is unequaled. It's unparalleled in what I've experienced. And it's interesting that, like I said before, goes hand in hand with they have to have permission to intervene. I remember when I was taking my father to chemo and radiation back in 2019 for cancer treatment, right? And I would go into the facility with dad and like all these people with cancer, right? And there's like a lot of suffering. And I feel the ant beings around, they're like super excited. They want to help people. It's kind of
Wow.
weird, right? And they're like hovering around. They're like, can we have permission to? I'm like, I don't know, go talk to the cancer people. Just go ask their higher self if they want help.
So they
But
do okay, so they don't really intervene unless you have high enough frequency to actually somehow subconsciously say yes to this.
yeah, and they could be interacting with your higher self, but
Right.
it's kind of cute how they're so careful. They're always like, would this be okay? Because they know that people are afraid of the ant people, and that it's some people are, and some people they remember that other people humans have been abducted by them. So I
Right.
think they're just super like conscious of that. That's all. And they are healers. They are like mathematical reprogrammers. Restoring numerological encoding in the DNA to its original aspect. So it would be interesting, like apply that to a cancer patient. That's really interesting. They could absolutely come as healers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
on that note, someone's asking, how can we connect with them telepathically if we want to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wouldn't recommend connecting telepathically with anybody or anything unless you are, and this relates to, I think, a question further down the line. Be
Yep.
grounded. If you want to be grounded and not just have like a wide open blown out crown and no grounding, because then you could get interference. But if you're asking from a heart's perspective and you have heart consciousness, you can connect with them. They'd be happy to connect with you. They want to connect with humans. It's like I said, it's kind of equalizing the score for them to be able to connect with humans. I think that's beautiful. Yeah.
Is there a protocol or a symbol people can focus on or something?
I would say focus on the colors of pink and light green in your heart and make the intention that you want to be introduced to them.
Okay.
Yeah, and just give that some space and let yourself receive a kind of like you're breathing in a loving frequency and exhaling that as well. Yeah. Um, what else? I could read a little, maybe read a little. I can't say it better than she said it. So if you don't mind, I will
Yeah,
read
yeah, sure.
a little piece that she gave to me. And
Hmm.
it contains a little bit about their origin. Um, yeah, as well. She said, "We are of the Hopi star. Many we are coming from far. Our origins are varied, our history long and unending, no beginning, no end. Ant, the word, is only one form, our 3D appearance, as you've noted. We function on our own from within our structural code. We are written with a cosmic code, built of light, a mandate of sorts to help make right. We have helped, we have harmed, and have been harmed. Many were wounded, and some never to return. She means from her group. We don't live on the earth. We are sovereign from birth, interfacing as it's written in our code, decide where we go. In some sense, we never die or wear out. Functioning as a group, we go on and on and on. This is beyond what human persons can understand. That is because it is the coding of another dimension. Remember, our aspect may appear in 3D as an ant, but we are light beings serving light expansion. It is true I speak as an individual voice, but together I am with many, and we share as if one body, one mind. That is the easiest way to explain it to the human mind. It is true that members of our race, our ant family home, have been co-opted by negative sources to serve negative ends. So you are affected, and so weakness, and we see both in the end as right. And she means without judgment from a higher dimensional non-dual perspective, that both outcomes, in a sense, from their perspective, can be fitting, given what we're doing here in duality. Wow. They see it all as an expression of source in a way, and eternal energy taking its course. Yeah. So
very good.
Any more? Yeah.
I just want to say that this is concurrent with what others are saying, like other seers and contactees are saying about the ant beings and the insectoids in general, that they basically represent, in the 3D, they represent a certain archetype of an insect being, you know, a builder, a helper, something that has to do with the structure of existence. And on a higher level, they represent, you know, you could say it was like creator race, or, you know, the architects, the architects of the creation. So yeah,
that's fast, Alice. Thank you, because I haven't done much external research on it. I appreciate that kind of confirmation. And it's what's interesting too, in the desert Southwest in the U.S., where I lived for so many years, you can see the petroglyphs left behind. Some of them look like big ant beings. I mean, they're certainly aliens with larger eyes and structure that could be taken as an ant. So, and that's Hopi land. That is Hopi land.
Wow, amazing! Thank you. This is really cool. Okay, next one is about the Draco. Can you describe the Draco you were working with?
That's quite a juxtaposition, yo.
Yeah, what was their variations, their size, their height, and what could you glean from their social structure, their customs and demeanor?
Yeah, we go from talking about up here to like down in the sewer. So yeah, the Draco, I can feel my solar plexus just tightening with anxiety.
Oh, really?
They are, and their social structure, you know, the ones I think we're talking here about relevant to the moon first, you know, they, I mean, their social structure is extremely hierarchical, and it's based on caste. And the build wise, the Draco on the moon working at the German base with me were a little bit less in status and also in stature. They were a little shorter, probably 7 feet tall, not so big, but they were felt quite stocky in their greenish, bronzy, brown, blackish, predominantly green. Then
more like crocodiles,
just the model,
like
the sort of
turtle kind of.
Do you mean their appearance overall?
I mean the phenotype. Yeah, was it more like a crocodile or a raptor, or more like a shorter snout kind of thing?
Shorter snout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, bipedal, probably most people know that, claws, and just very imposing. Like anywhere they are, they take up all the energy in the room and then some. Even these ones that are lesser in status, let's say, and just kind of the workers, I mean, I just find them quite fearsome. However, on the moon, because they were training me, ultimately they were training me to be owned later on by the Draco Empire out in the Kuiper Belt. I didn't feel quite as afraid as I did of those ones who were really fearsome out in the Kuiper Belt who owned me later on.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very punitive in how everything is run. Like a system of punishment and reward is really how, at least from my observation, how things played out. So they're very keen to punish anybody who's out of line in their eyes, in their determination to be insubordinate. They will punish it immediately and swiftly. And they're extraordinary in their ability to connect their mind with their will to create an outcome on the spot. So
Okay.
they think it, we talk about human co-creative powers. We have creative capacity indelibly written into us, but they are masters of that, and they can create it what they need on the spot, create an outcome. And of course, all the what do you call it, holographic technology that they are so famous for being masters of as well, and they're good with genetics and so on. But and also as well, I mean, most people probably know this. I mean, they're telepathically, it's like their minds are on telepathically on steroids. It's telepathy with like, times 1,000 amps. It's so the mind melds the Draco. Like they know what you're thinking, know what you're going to do, know where you are at all times. Yeah. So, and I would say wrathful. They're wrathful, certainly wrathful. I wish I had some like better things to say about the Draco. Any other group, I could find something really nice to say about them. It's kind of my nature. But I guess the more favorable thing would be that I wasn't terrified of them on the moon the way I was more later on with the upper level empire higher caste beings that I was owned by. Yeah.
So the ones on the moon were, like you said, two types, were like a lower class, probably warrior class, and then there was like worker class.
Yeah, and I was mostly interfacing with like a more of a worker class. Like they weren't like running the show, or it's just that their energy, let me clarify that, because I say wherever the Draco are, they are running the show, and it's because their energy is so potent, more than any other. Thinking quickly here, more than any other being that I met in the programs, it's the Draco that take up the energy and are they're powerful. They're powerful in a way that goes into darkness, but it's power nonetheless, right? And they use it to their advantage every moment.
And when they want to create, as you said, an outcome, how does it look? What do you mean? Is it like materializing stuff, or what is it?
It could be, but it's more like through. I mean, it certainly could be telekinetic, or it's a rendering that can come through energy. Anything that you can render through working with energy, it could be bringing form from the non-form realm, but more like creating a situation that's going to be advantageous. They can do that immediately.
Wow.
They can say you're having a conflict with them, they're going to take the upper hand immediately and create that outcome right then and there.
Okay. And
yes.
You said that they punish and they reward. How would they punish or reward someone?
I think it's a manipulation of the human mind. They know our psyche because they can get into it so easy. They don't even need a password to see where we're weak, where we're vulnerable, where we're cringing, where we're frightened, and also the places that will make our human egoic mind light up with pleasure. So they can. It's a psychological manipulation, I would say, more than anything. Later on, when I was, again, we'll talk about this in another episode, being owned by the Draco and the Kuiper Belt way out the edge of the solar system, but they would punish me with a holographic experience, sending me into a hell realm like that. And the same thing with if I'd been achieving optimally and maintaining myself optimally and fulfilling my role in a way that they wanted to reward, they could send me into a pleasure realm. And it's all holographically rendered. It's basically a virtual experience that is every bit as real as you and I sitting here talking. So your body, your mechanism doesn't know the difference between what is holographic and what isn't.
And how long does it last, usually? Any of these
There's
scenarios?
No time. It could be, a year could be a moment, right? It's like time becomes really slippery. The farther you get off Earth, the more time collapses in this realm of Earth 3D. It almost ceases to exist. So it's a little bit difficult to talk about the time continuum.
Okay. And so the ones on Planet X were like really big, and the royal whites. kind of thing?
I never saw the royal whites, not to my
Okay.
memory, but they were royal of something. Yeah, they were very regal. They were very large
Hmm.
and in charge, no question. And they were they were taller and more. Had this more elegant appearance. Yeah.
Next up, in your practice, have you seen cases of implanted memories in those who haven't participated in the programs but were given false memories?
Okay. Yeah, this is a good question. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, In my practice, I see a lot of people who are confused about what happened to them, but that's normal. I mean, if anybody's getting SSP memories back, they're going to be like confused about what happened to them. What I see predominantly is people who don't have that much memory, just like these fragments. And I also
Hmm.
see like screen memory, which would be more like a screen memory being the function of the person's own like protective psychological mechanism that's going to keep them from like freaking out if they knew the truth. So something that's not, it's easier to digest than what actually the truth was.
Hmm.
As far as people having, I've seen some people who have memories that are not theirs, and maybe that's in line with what the
Hmm.
questioner is asking, like a false memory. It feels like it belongs to somebody else or some other system. So it
Wow.
could be along those lines. And I would also say it's kind of in line with this, is like more than false memory implanted, more like people who were implanted in the SSP community to cause division.
Okay.
Which is kind of what the false memory thing is. I think that the questioner is getting
Yep.
at
Right.
people who are intentionally coming forward with stories of that might be diversion from the truth with an
Hmm.
intention more to cause harm, disruption, and all of that. I mean, we know that there's a lot of interest in momentum in causing division in the SSP community. There's a ton of that going on in rendering internal dissension to upset the balance here. So they're using all means, all hands on deck to achieve that end. I mean, that's my perception.
Okay. Next one is about Dulce. What do you think the native people know about the place today?
Everything.
Right.
Well, so it's my impression living in the Four Corners area where Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado meet, a lot of native population out there. It's my impression that the native folk are much more open to paranormal and
Yeah.
things to do with ETs and the supernatural and things related to conspiracy theory, way more open-minded about that. And it's part of their, I think because they're more openly spiritual as well. I mean, there's just like a ease of relating with that realm. So I think they're quite aware of what has gone on at Dulce. And I know how to, back when I was living in Durango, which, is about, I don't know, it's not so far from Dulce, right on the New Mexico-Colorado border. I had a friend of mine who had gone out to the Jicarilla Apache Reservation where Dulce is located. At night, I was like a Saturday night or something. She'd gone out, and I was like, "Why are you even driving around Dulce then?" And she said the res cops pulled her over, and were like really menacing. They didn't have any charge to pull her over with, and they told her to leave. And I think they, some of the cop squad out there, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's no reason you go to Dulce, New Mexico. It's very remote. There's nothing there except the space. They don't want people messing around. They don't want, there might be, have been in the past, some kind of cover going on. So I think I
Hmm.
could see like factions between the both sides, the more we're in line with the dark ones running Dulce, or more with the lighter side of things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you seen the movie Arrival, 1996, with Charlie Sheen?
No, and I'm gonna come clean right off the bat here because P, I'm always getting the movie question, right? So I have to say, I only saw Star Wars last year. So it
Yeah.
took me from like 1977 to 2022 to watch Star Wars. And when I did, I watched the prequel. I watched the main thing, the original three. Then I watched the sequel, and I watched it 3 times. And then I watched The Mandalorian, and I watched that 3 times. And then I watched Rogue One, and then like it went on and on and on. But I haven't seen Arrival. I'm so sorry. I mean, I think like we all need to sit down and give Rebecca a movie binge week or something. Maybe that's part of my summer vacation.
Okay, so about the movies, scratch that.
Sorry, sorry.
Okay, so there is data about the celebrities being cloned there, and Marilyn Monroe was mentioned specifically for higher ranking ICC people. Anything you
Mm.
saw or heard about this? No?
I can't say I saw anything to that, but it could. I was really in the dungeon. They would have been doing that probably in another area, if so. So I don't have firsthand on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the people that were cloned that you saw were just regular people or ETs, basically.
I was dealing more, yeah. Well, like cloned hybrids,
Okay.
and even human body parts. We were
Mhm.
dealing with people's pieces and parts, right? So less of it was all the really kind of gruesome stuff. Cloning itself seems more sterile than a lot of what I observed in
Okay.
Tulsi.
And the body parts were used for the biochemical processes, or they were just for sale outside somewhere?
Some of it was for sale off-world.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know any other facilities on the planet that are bigger in scale than Dulce? What can you say about Dugway in, I think it's in Utah, and Pine Gap in Australia?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind on that is Area 51 for sure.
Okay.
Is rivals Dulce, and I think the scope of what's
You
going
think?
on
Really?
at Area 51 was
Oh, okay.
probably, well, because it feels like when I look at this psychically, it feels like so many different like satellite operations, like Black Ops within Black Ops, and taking up a lot of land around Groom Lake. So it just feels like there's a lot of layers to again, just looking at it psychically, a lot of layers that are beyond it. Like we can talk about Area 51 and reverse engineering of craft, right? Like ET craft. That I think there's a lot that's going on there that has to do with keeping children in cages and mind control and pushing the limits of human consciousness and things like that, and time travel and on and on and on at Area 51.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah.
anything about the AL499 facility?
Oh, this is right. Yeah, and by the way, let me mention, yeah, Dugway,
And Pine
Utah.
Gap.
I don't
And
know
Pine
too
Gap.
much about. Yeah, Dugway and Pine Gap. I don't have firsthand really anything on them. I
Okay.
mean, Pine Gap feels extensive and
Yep.
really quite dark. It feels really, just again looking psychically. Yeah, and then what was the other one? AL 499. I don't know about it personally from my own experience. I would say that it's in the UK, I think, but it also feels like when again looking psychically, it feels like it is really dialed down. Like it feels almost not quite defunct, but that the operations they were doing there maybe moved on to a different facility. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we in connection with Casbolt, right?
Right. So this facility seems to be a harmonizing facility for energy, psychotronics, also for like false messages for channelers.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
Tavistock Institute kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the following question is, have you had any technical interference in your work,
Yeah.
and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I think this gets back to what we were saying at the beginning. I feel really fortunate in that I didn't I had been meditating and deeply involved in my, devoted daily spiritual practice for several years before I began to receive anything through channeling. And I think that was to my benefit, because what does it do? It's very grounding. All of my practice allows me to be deeply grounded and rooted and more clear in the lower energy centers, and stabilized in my experience, and also heart-centered. Those two things, and also working with the energy field, those things are going to serve as your most awesome protection, or at least one very strong, strong forms of protection from outside interference. So I've been fortunate in that I haven't struggled, at least not that I've known with, about with interference with them, what I'm getting. And you can also, observe what you're getting. What are the messages saying? Like right away, you can tune into the energy. Like, what does that feel like to you?
Have you experienced maybe before or in the process any kind of wave of energy that you would identify as a psychotronic attempt?
Let me think about that. Not to my knowledge. I also, I am often wearing black silver around my head and around most of my body because I'm really EMF sensitive. Yeah. I don't wear it on my interviews because it looks like I'm from another planet, but that's something you don't know. So if in my sleep it blocks that stuff, it'll block 5G as well.
About the moon, what do you remember about the dark side of the moon? In the programs, did you catch any information of the origins of the moon and the technology that influences humanity?
I wish I had more direct knowledge of that from my experiences on the moon. This is where I have to say again that I was a little kid when I was on the moon. Like those were my earliest abduction experiences, and I was still 4 or 5 or little. And I definitely was not debriefed. Nobody took me aside and said, "Hey, yo, this is what's going on here. And do you want to know? Let's take you on a tour of anyway."
Right.
I'm kind of laughing about this. So when I would leave for the moon at an underground substation, right? So I went from underground to underground on the moon, and I can't say I have any experience with it, like the atmospheric conditions of the moon, not firsthand from my child's form. So I can say no, I don't really know much about that. I mean, we know what's said is the moon is an artificial satellite, and it's been used to beam negative frequencies down here on Earth and all of that. So I don't know exactly myself from the program perspective, particularly. What I could say, this has come up with other people a number of times. So I finally did a reading on this. Like, so people had said, so if that's true about all this, negative influence on the moon with it being artificial and, blah, 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 how can it possibly be a harbinger of hope? And for millennia, indigenous peoples and spiritually aligned people have been really projecting a lot of positive energy to the moon and using it in ritual and ceremony. It represents the feminine and the yin principle and so on and so forth, as opposed to the solar principle. Because the moon has been the object or subject of so much positive rendering and co-creative energy chucked at it, so to speak, from humans, it's really aligned it in a different way. So that's what I noticed and observed from just reading it psychically. So the moon, if you're like all kind of screwed up about what's going on with the moon and is it scary and bad, think about maybe just I'm offering that as an alternate perspective as well.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Someone is asking, which of the groups do you think were involved in the biggest atrocities on the moon? The Greys, the Reptilians, the Tall Whites, or others?
Germans.
Okay.
Sorry. No, let me elaborate. Because I was working at the Dark Fleet base. What do you want me to say? They were the real ones enslaving me.
Okay.
Germans and the Reich. It's the Reich. So the Germans, the Draco, and the Greys were the ones that were heading up the things that I was involved in, and that's what I know. I don't recall Tall Whites, but it's all a transhumanist agenda, and as well as everything going on at the time with the slave trade, which we talked about in the last episode.
Any positive experiences with ETs on the moon?
Yeah, we might. I wonder if we touched on this in the last episode I mean, the positives were the ones that were being experimented on in captivity and, being altered and hybridized and all of that. So I had favorable experiences with benevolence, but they weren't on the moon in the capacity that you might be thinking. They were in a subordinate and exploited position. The Germans, yeah, I wish I could say as well something better about the Germans. A lot of the Germans seemed to be, the only word I have really is de-soul, like beings who almost seemed AI, like they were human, but I can't quite, when I feeling their energy and when I observe them working, they feel like something's gone from them. They're not all human, and I don't know still quite what to make of that. So
Well,
desold is the word I would use.
according to Penny and others, they were pumped up on black goo,
Mhm.
and they were all like running basically like a one AI system.
Yeah, I would believe that. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, that's what you gathered, not from knowing specifically what it was, but actually just the sensing of it, right?
Yeah, when you watch them, they just feel, you can tell, like read people's energy, like, oh, there's something wrong here, but why can't my child self can't put my finger on it.
Okay, the next one is about regeneration and soul migration. There was this question about like insectoids disassembling your body to see if there was a soul in there. Is that your story?
Okay, so yeah, let's clarify because I think this person might have confused my story, like with somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
I was disassembled by a group, the reptilians on Mars, and we're going to go into Mars in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is reptilians that are native to Mars, different than the Draco, very, very different.
Okay.
And they ended up cannibalizing me for parts. So this might
Wow.
be what that person is thinking of. There's a
All
big
right.
story attached to that.
Uh-huh.
Yes, they took me apart. They wanted to see what my biology was
Oh,
and
okay.
what my technology was, because remember, I'm both. I'm human and
Right.
I'm also a cyborg. Did want to see if
Yeah.
I had a soul. Yeah.
Okay, so about the soul migration, someone's asking about if there is no new body ready for someone who is deceased or something, what happens to them?
Well, here's the thing. I love this question. Thanks for asking that, because it makes me think, maybe I could have exited the system and like not, maybe the program would have been over. But the thing is, when the engineering of a super soldier is very precise, and these guys running the show here do not overlook anything. They are so spot on. Every T is crossed, every I is dotted, nothing is superfluous. So there's always going to be bodies in the backup. That's the plan with a super soldier, 100%. So
Uh-huh.
there's bodies in stasis. They could be in pods. They're always always going to be a body. They're generating new bodies of you as you're out doing your duty, right? They're always in situ, right? Like there's always a sort of assembly line going on, or they're gestating the body. Yeah.
Okay. People have talked about soul containers and soul trap technology. I think it's an electromagnetic technology that captures you and holds you in until you're maybe transferred to a new body or until they can sell you to some other owner.
There was definitely ways of keeping us in stasis to stop everything to be held for a while, indefinitely, even, for a long, you could do that
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. Definitely, if you're waiting for a new owner, absolutely,
You
yeah.
mean electromagnetically, not physically, not a body, right?
Either way, they could work with the consciousness or the body or
Mm-hmm.
both, or yeah.
Okay. So there is information about the two bases in Alaska that recruit volunteers for the programs.
Oh, okay. And this question is funny because it's the volunteers.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, let's get into Alaska. Alaska is like mired in mystery and high levels of strangeness, right? So case in point, I mean, I live in what's called the Alaska Triangle, which is bounded by Juneau in the south, up to Barrow on
Uh-huh.
the Arctic Sea, and then over to Anchorage. Like all kinds of weird shit goes on up here. And I mean, anything can happen here. It's such a big place. And recall that on most US maps, Alaska's not on the map. It's no nobody. Alaska is so out of sight, out of mind. It's like in the deep freeze, sub-zero for 8 months of the year. Like anything goes on here. Okay, so there's also a higher rate of disappearances in Alaska than any other state in the U.S. I mean, that's a lot of states. We have more disappeared people here that are never found, leave without a trace. Right? Spooky. A lot of magnetic anomalies in Alaska. Yeah. We'll get to Mount Hayes in a minute and talk about the base there. But I think speaking of a moment here on magnetic anomalies, Linda Moulton Howe has done really good work. I love her research. I think she's got a ton of integrity. She had a lot of contacts about a pyramid west of Denali, highest point in North America. 50 miles west, there's an anomaly that contains a pyramid, and there was, I mean, just a really unique thing that was causing disruption in planes, like planes,
Yeah.
their how do you call it? Like their the way they navigate being disrupted
Uh-huh.
by such things as this. So I would, you know, if you're interested in that, do a little web search on Linda's Alaska Pyramid info. Yeah, we know that a lot of planes have, I mean, it's for decades. This has been going on for decades. Planes going down, like back in '86. Also, there was in planes that they disappear. It's not like there's a crash and you can do a crash retrieval thing. There's nothing. There's nothing. And these are, to me, I feel like these are definitely alien involvement with these.
Uh-huh.
Back in '86, I think it was Japan, and there was a cargo flight bound for Japan. This was down in around Kodiak. This is really well documented. There were 3 ET craft, UFOs, that like were escorting the craft for upwards of 40 minutes,
Uh-huh.
flanking the craft. I mean, and the military air traffic control has this documented, like really fascinating to me. So, and behind me, I'm going to share this. My backdrop today is this blue spiral of light, which which appeared less than 100 miles from me. This thing was back in April. I think it was April 17th. This was caught in the sky with the aurora flanking it. And the official powers that be said this is like rocket fuel from SpaceX, like as if to, you know, the cover story for this being that. So this is Alaska, a more recent anomaly. And we also, of course, have HARP up here, which is the in Galcona, the high frequency active auroral research research program, which we could talk a lot about HARP and make some guesses about the geoengineering and mind control that come out of HARP and many of its subsidiaries around the world. But let's go into, Hayes. So Hayes is part of the Alaska range as well. And I can see Mount Hayes from where I live, you know, on a clear day, I can see Hayes. It's really hard to get to. There's no roads going in there. And, you know, CIA declassified documents detail through their remote viewers for military, documenting an alien base under Hayes. So there's been a lot of disappearances in that area and so on and so forth. And it looks to me like and it feels to me like this is there's nothing to do with US military human involvement. It feels like 100% ET, extraterrestrial. And I know a lot of craft have been sighted around Mount Hayes. And I feel like, why aren't all these UFO hunters up in Alaska? At least they could be, maybe because the best time to be here would be the summer, but you don't get any darkness. You'd have to be here in the winter. And so if people are brave and want to get into the paranormal stuff up here, they should come in the winter. And when I look at Hayes, psychically, it looks like a huge portal underneath Hayes, like enormous energy portal under there. And so the blue spiral is not that far from Hayes. Like where this was spotted and photographed isn't far from Mount Hayes.
So your take on the spiral is that it's a portal, someone entering or exiting a portal?
To me, it feels like a craft that is doing something interdimensionally, like entering or exiting a portal system. Yeah.
Okay.
A portal opening, and then, but it feels like there's something craft-like attached to this. Yeah. Okay. So we can wonder, but it's definitely multidimensional. It is not jet fuel or rocket fuel.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know anything about the object shut down over Alaska in February this year?
Nothing like, I don't know from my firsthand experience. I know back in Feb, I seen some anomalies in the sky that didn't seem to be drones, certainly not aircraft or satellites, not the ISS. I think they were craft, which isn't, you know, I see a lot of things wherever I go, things that disappear while I'm watching them. But as far as I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of bait and switch kind of deception going on to keep people in the US confused about, you know, it's all the ET cover up. I'm not exactly sure about what happened there. Yeah. Okay.
And finally, what can you say to the SSB skeptics who take these testimonies for fantasy tales and delusion?
Yeah, I get it. I totally 100% get it. Totally get it. So I have a really good story about this actually. Um, before I really realized what happened to me and I was starting to make sense of my anomalous memories, I had heard, I think this was around 2016, maybe 2015, I don't know. I had heard like just a few minutes of somebody who it might have been Randy Kramer, I don't know.
Okay.
And I don't even know how I landed on this. My mind was not open to this stuff. I would never have believed this stuff if it hadn't, it hadn't happened to me and I started to get the recall in the time prior to my father's death. But I was just like listening to this program, this radio show, and I was like, that guy's fucking nuts. And I just slammed it off. I was like angry. So that's really come back to like, the joke is on me. But to your point, I really understand that people, this is hard. This is the most bizarre thing. Do you think I've spent my life aspiration as like, this is going to be, I'm going to get on stage and talk about how I was cloned on Mars? Do you think this wins me friends? Do you really think this is good for my career? I don't think it is, but I'm doing it anyway because somebody has to tell the truth. So I really understand that. I understand that perspective that technology is beyond what we can fathom. It's all really, really bizarre. And
Yeah.
it's kept that way. We know this. Like the tales are so bizarre that it's hard to metabolize. Abduction all by
Right.
itself, you have to start there and go, oh, is it possible that there's ETs? I mean, SSP stuff is like way off the deep end. So I really have a lot of empathy and sympathy for people who can't, this is just a delusional BS. Yeah. And I appreciate people for listening and having an open mind and saying, well, what if this is true? Yeah.
Yeah.